And I think we should be live, maybe, potentially, possibly. We'll see. I think we are, right? YouTube streaming works. After complaining about it on Discord and on Twitch, it now fucking works. I don't know what changed. I have a good idea what changed. Is that thank you for the email. I am very much aware that I'm live. I think what changed is that I filed a bug report or a feedback report, which they probably manually enabled me to live stream, which doesn't solve the fucking issue, by the way. But at least I can now live stream. So what we did last time, I will show you real quick. If you have not seen yesterday's stream or the VOD going up on YouTube today of that, is we went into this test level real quick. And in here we made the Unreal camera system. So the Unreal camera system is literally that. It's a rail that has a camera on it and then somewhat automatically changes the camera around. It's really messy at the moment. As I said yesterday, it doesn't work, but it does function. So at least there's that, right? So the way it works for anybody, again, doing some catch up, is we have this bottom spline over here, which compares the player character's position to wherever the closest position on this spline is for that. Then that gets translated to this top spline, and the corresponding percentage, like if you're like 50% the way through, is where the camera gets put, and then it also like always changes its rotation to look at the actual player character. So that's how it works. That's what all of this does. And today we're going to do a slightly different thing with that. Because the issue we have right now is that I have no way to like anchor the camera, saying that, for instance, when I get to, let's hide the background there for a second. When I get to this point over here, for instance, the camera needs to be over here. The only way to do that is to finagle around a little bit with the length of the splines and try to get them to match up. But the more this top spline makes movements that deviate from the path that this spline is taking, the more of a problem that becomes and the more it starts to lag behind, which again, I'll try to show you. Last stream, we kind of managed to not necessarily fix that, but at least with a lot of manual work, things got slightly better. At the end of today's stream, I am hoping, if not expecting, to have this just functioning for me to use, and maybe if we have enough time, even to be able to put it into other levels as well. So the issue here, right, is that the moment I get here, I would like the camera to already have turned around. It has not. It turns around like in the middle of me jumping over those things, and then when I walk over this part, and then like here, what the hell is this camera, right? This is just really fucking bad. So also the checkpoint did something weird there. Gotta look into that. So long story short is that, and you can definitely tell here that the character is slowly like going further and further away from the camera. That being said, I really like the way the camera movement and character work on that obstacle now. Like that was, before that was a huge ass fucking problem, and now it's not anymore. And you know, sometimes the camera turning around actually, like that gives me inspiration. Maybe sometimes I can purposefully use that. Right now, the main issue is not that it does that. Well, it kind of is. The main issue is more so that I don't have control, very fine control at any rate, over when it does what. Also, you definitely need the camera to be behind the character there, otherwise you don't see where you're jumping towards. So that's where we left off last time. The way we're going to fix that is have a system that's relatively similar to what we have right now, but we're going to have it so that the actual spline points match up. So when the character is at the first spline point, so will the camera. When the character is at the second spline point, so will the camera be. And so on and so forth. So what we need to do for that is first write a little bit of code at the begin play section here. So let's take this, move it up here, and this is only like set camera. Now we're gonna get into the real fun part. So bottom spline tracking, and we get spline points, get number of spline points. That's very important to have. So and we're going to store the distance value for every single one of those spline points in a float array. So distance bottom spline. Let's make the distance values so that I know what I mean by that. Values. Distance values bottom spline array. So that's going to be a float value. And we're going to change that into an array. So what we want to have is a... We want to get a for loop. Do we want to have a for each loop? I don't necessarily think we want to have a for each loop. Unless you can get all the spline points number, you probably can't actually. So for loop, a normal for loop. Don't mess this up. First index is 0, last index is again, number of spline points starts at 1, not at 0. So we want to do this minus. I think if you just do minus minus, we can do decrement integer, right? Yeah, that we can do. Should we though? I think that shouldn't be a problem. So last index will be the number of spline points. That makes sense, yes. Then we want to take this and add to that. And we're going to add we don't even necessarily need this index, I realize now, which is very good. That's not a problem. So we're going to add a value to that, and what we're actually going to add is distance along spline at spline point for the bottom spline. And this is where we need to index. There we go. And this is a point index, so that should start at 0, I assume. We're going to figure out very soon if that's not the case. And then the return value of that will be that. So now we have a system where when we start at begin play, we create an array that will have the amount of indexes equal to the number of spline points, and every single entry in this array will have a distance value that corresponds to the distance along the spline for one of the spline points. This is what we need. I think, right? I probably should have written down last night when I came up with this idea a little bit more in detail what I want to do with it, because I'm trying to remember what the actual idea was and not deviated too much from it yet until I've got a first basic ID like written up here. And you can just go fucking die. I mean, I can just block the account that does that. Anyway, where was I at? Yeah, you are getting hide user on this channel, I think is what we want there. It's very good. So now we remove those last two messages and you can go get fucked. So with that, we probably also want to do that same thing for... I am getting absolutely spammed to hell and I need a fucking moderator to do this shit for me. But I don't even have any viewers, so let alone like getting moderators in here. So I don't actually know if this is necessarily required to do, but I'm just going to make this array and see if I actually end up using it. So distance value camera spline we'll do the same thing with, really. So we just copy this entire thing, change these two into being this component instead, which we might as well do the same thing here and just make that a thing. And then when this is completed, you move on to this. So, and get the points for the camera spline instead. So this is create array camera spline points. I don't think I need to get the warp position necessarily. I don't think so. We'll come back to this. We might make a vector array as well if that ends up being needed. I don't think we do. Create array bottom spline points. And let's just like put these down here so that I can actually see what the hell is going on. I'm trying to be a little bit less... You know what, I might just put the chats into... I don't know if I can put the chat into subscriber only mode. I don't think that I can, so let's just ignore this for the time being. So we have these two arrays. What are we gonna do? This fucking chat thing is really throwing me. I'll just compile that because why not? I think this is everything that we should need to do at begin play. Because now we... what do we do now? We don't need to print out these anymore. So let's just like get rid of that so that I don't confuse myself too much. I don't even know why this is here. So we're gonna get rid of it. Now, first, before we do anything else, let's test if I fucked something up real bad and it stopped working. I don't think that anything stopped working. This seems very much like the thing is working exactly as it was before. maybe it's actually not. Because it's not flipping out as much. Like it's... Maybe I did break something. Then again, it doesn't really seem... Yeah, no, definitely I didn't break anything. Yeah, no, I didn't break anything because it's still broken. This seems about as broken as it was before. And broken in the same way. Which is the important part there. So, that's good. That's very, very good indeed. Okay, so what we do now is we have evented get point on spline. Let's see, this is... Okay, hold on. So here we get that percentage, right? It's in here that we need to do something. Because this is literally like just... What we more or less do, and this is a very bad way of explaining it probably, but what this is we create a percentage out of two values. So you could see it as like we encrypt something and then we decrypt it over here. And that's why everything we are going to do today is probably going to happen between these 2 points. So let's put all this a little to this side. And then we're going to think, right? So I probably have to rewrite a bit of this. Because I'm going to lower the music. This is a stupid excuse, but actually like the music is a bit too loud for me to focus. Which is really fucking sad. Okay, so we have the bottom spline. We're getting our world location to distance along spline. Which is... Let's just like put this away for a moment. I don't think we need this anymore. Maybe. Let's put this down here for the moment. Because what we want... Okay, so what we want is we have 0.0 to 0.1. We know the position of 0.0. So we want to get the bottom spline. And we want to... Based on this distance, we want to know at what percent we are between those points. So we want to get... what do you want to get, actually? We want to do something with this. Hold on. And that is we want to compare. So if A is greater than B, it has to be less than. No, it has to be greater than. Right? Because then we do a for each loop. A real quick one. So what we're doing now is we're getting the distance and seeing if it's bigger than the array element. Is that going to help us a lot? I need to know if the distance is between two specific indexes. So we need to check for it to be bigger than one, but it's always going to be bigger than everything. No, that's not true. It's always going to be smaller than everything. Except the very first one. So... we make a new variable, I think, first and foremost, which is distance spline. And that's just going to be a single float variable, so there we go. Oh, God. I should not have started this tonight. I should have just taken my relaxation evening. Which I'll do tomorrow. Tomorrow's Christmas Eve. I'll probably just like lay back and do nothing tomorrow. So okay, what we're going to do, right? What this entire thing is about is right now the way it works before I like absolutely tore this thing apart. Probably should have made a separate object to test this out with, or at least as a backup. Right now, the way it works is we are going from a value of 0 to 1 over the entire level. But the way it's going to work is it's going from a value of 0 to 1 over the course of the first 2 spline points. Then it's going from a value from 1 to 2. So the decimal place is what is the thing that changes automatically based on the moving distance. The thing before the decimal place, like the whole number, the integer, we manually have to, well, not manually, but we have to program some things to recognize which one that is. And then we have to make something that does the reverse, which that's a lot easier. Because that's literally just saying if it's index 1, it's 0. Or if it's index 0, it's always 0. If it's index 1, it's if it's 1 point something, it's index 1. If it's 2 point something, it's index 2. I think. Okay, we're going to figure this out as we go. Because trying to theory craft this at the moment is not really working. So we have... let's just forget everything about beyond 0 to 1. Let's just try to make a system that works from 0 to 1, and from there we can build on. So what we want to have is, and I'm actually going to take over the headphones for a moment here to not have the music in my ears, because fuck all of that shit. So what we have is we have a distance number. That distance number gets compared and see if it's greater than the array element. So for the first loop, that's going to compare, is it greater than 0? Of course, it's greater than 0. Then it's going to compare it to index number 1, which might be like 1500. So then, is it greater than 1500? If that answer is yes, it goes on to number 2. If that answer is no, that means that you're between 0 and 1. So we make a branch, and that branch goes through false only. If it's true, we do nothing, because we don't want anything to happen when this is greater than that. I think that makes sense. And we add the array index. Int plus float is really what I want. No, we can just actually set it to that. Never mind. We can just set it to that. But then the issue is, right, because A is greater than B. No, that works. No, that does work. I'm second guessing myself. So if A is greater than B, it says and if A is not greater than B, I should say, it sets the spline distance to be equal to the array index. That is the integer part of the spline distance. Then we need to figure out the percentage between array elements. So at that point we have the index. And we need to figure out... That's actually pretty tricky to get right, I think. Because we can just get one that's... if we just do that. Alright. We have both the array index and the next index available to us easily here. So that is nice. And then we... I mean, I suppose we might as well just like make this go like that, just for the sake of keeping things neat and organized. At that point, we get array. Given array index returns the item in the array at that index. Yeah, we get. So we get both the values for that. So we get this one. And then we also get that. So now we have two float values. And this is the float value for the point that we've just passed. And this is the float value for the point that we have yet to pass. Now we need to subtract this one from that one to figure out what the total distance between the two is. So we take this one, we do float minus float, and now we have the distance in units, not in percentages, but in units. Okay. Then we need to figure out from this how far we are along between these two, and then convert that into the percentage. And that's where my brain starts to short circuit a little, because I need to... Let's say, just for the sake of argument, that this is 1,000 and this is 2,000, right? So 1,500 is 50% the way through that. How do I math to get there? Because this is 0%. Let's think about it that way. This is 0%, this is 100%. So, and this value is anything between 0 and 100. But really, this is 0 and this is 1. This is any value in between. And the way we get there is by looking at what index we just passed and subtracting that from that distance. So we take this float, we subtract, we already have that actually, because that's this one. So now we have these two, and if we just divide those together, that should, by all accounts, give us the percentage between these two values, I think. So we divide float by float. Now the question is, which way around is that again? Because this is the total distance, this is the distance that we've traveled. I always get this wrong on the first try, but this is a lot more complicated than what we had last night, so I really need to get this right. So, because we need to get a value under 1, we need to divide the smaller value by the bigger value. So we divide the smaller value by the bigger value. And then we set the distance in spline again. Because we add that together with the integer value that we already had. Okay, I think we got something here. It's a bit messy. Again, I'm going to clean this up as soon as I know that it works. I'm not going to spend like 10 minutes trying to clean up all these spaghetti things without knowing that it actually works. So we now have a integer points percentage value in that float. We then need to reverse what we just did, more or less, right? Because this needs to like move over even more. Because what we just did is, again, more or less we like encrypted some information into one single variable. And now we need to make something to decrypt this entire thing into usable information again. So what we do is we take this and we truncate it, because I now know what truncate does. Hell fuck yeah. I didn't look it up, but it literally rounds a towards 0, truncating the fractional part. So minus 1.6 becomes minus 1, and 1.6 becomes 1. So it literally just, it removes the, it makes a float into an integer. It doesn't round, it literally just yeets everything after the decimal point. Which that also gives us a very easy way to then figure out what the actual decimal point is, I realize now. So this is a lot easier than that. Because we can figure things out relatively easily from there. Because we can then just minus float, right? If we just do this minus the integer, we only have the decimal value left over. So this is the percentage between things, this is the integer. Okay, then we get, but from the other spline, so it's a very good thing that I made a array for this one as well. We get the distance value for this spline at that point. Right? So we can start to plug that into there, and then it just doesn't move until we get to that spline point, and then it'll jump. So that means that we're almost there. It's been like, what, 30 minutes? I can't actually see how long it's been. That's a very good question. How long has it been? I think it's been about 30 minutes, right? About 35 minutes. And I think we're getting close to being there. So not having the actual background music bothering me is really fucking helping me. Then, next up we have this decimal place, right? Which, what do we do with that? Because we... Oh, I know. So we add this increment integer, because then we get the distance along spline for the next index point. Hell fucking yeah. So at this point, what do we know at this side of the equation? Is we know what point we just passed, we know what the next point is, and what their actual positions along spline are. We also know the percentage that we are between these two things. Now I need to just convert that percentage back into a value. And then add that value to this and plug it into here. So this needs to get a addition node, and that goes into there. And just for the sake of keeping things neat, we're going to plug this one into the bottom. And that's just going all the way over there because we don't want to mess with that too much. So yeah, this is eventually going to go into there, and that then all the way goes over there. So I've been kind of dancing around the actual problem here by explaining what I've been doing. Now I need to actually fix that problem. So let me take a sip of water and think about it for a second, because again, I think it's pretty much the reverse of something we've already done. Talking through this does make it on some levels easier, on some levels more difficult. So what we do is we get our distance along spline again, all the way from back here, I think. So can we just like add just like add anything really? Let's just add one of these. It's probably an easier way to do this, but this is the way I'm choosing to do it right now. Distance along spline. This is total distance along spline, which will always be between this and that. I'm kind of losing it. I had it for a moment there, but now I'm losing what I'm doing. Okay, so what we want to do probably is float minus float here. That gets you the total distance between this point and that point. Except we want to do it the other way around. We want to subtract that one from that one. I don't think we need this one after all, actually. I don't think we do. You can just go chill here for a moment. I'll probably delete that point in a moment, because I think I have a much better way of doing things right now. Because this is the total distance between the 2 points that we worry about. This is the percentage that we are at between those 2 points. So if we just multiply float by float, doesn't matter which way around we do it, we get the distance value we're at between those 2 points. And if we then add that to that, we get the total distance that we are along this plane. Which means that this can go directly into there. Okay. So that distance spline was pruned by the exact pin not being connected. That makes a lot of sense actually. So do that, and then this one should go into there. Let's see how this works. Answer? Not really. I mean, we don't need to set this variable at all, now that I think about it. This can literally just be a thing that goes from there to there, and from there to there, and then this just does not need to be a variable. Not even a little. Okay, but there still is a problem. Hold on, should this be connected through completed and not through the actual loop? That might very well be the case. Hold on a moment. That's not the problem. Okay. Attempt to access index 7 from array distance value bottom spline length 7. It shouldn't try to access index number 7 is the thing to begin with. Because I'm between index 0 and 1. So the fuck's up with that? Do I have this bit backwards? I probably have this bit backwards, to be honest. So what we do here is we check the distance being larger than the distance of the array element that we just had. So if it's bigger than 1, if it's bigger than 0, true, don't do anything. If it's bigger than 1, true, don't do anything, because that's the one we just passed. But if it's not bigger than 1, false. But that means it's also going to be not bigger than 2 and bigger than 3. So what we want to do is fucking hell. It's got to be bigger than I have an idea. First and foremost, we definitely need an AND gate. And we need to place all this shit a little more to the right again. Or I just make it here and then place it in somewhere where it fits. Okay, so we have distance has to be bigger than the last one that we passed. So it has to be this branch goes from true now, not from false. So when it is bigger than the element we have now and smaller than the element we have now plus 1, we run the entire thing. But if you then get to the next one, it's no longer bigger than the index we have right now. That makes sense. Yeah, I think that makes sense. So that is a little tricky to to fit in like physically with all the shit that we've got going on here. But we can place all of this a little bit to this side, and you can honestly don't need that extra little thing. So we can place you over there. Then we need to get bottom spline get. Copy. That is index plus plus. So that needs to go right here before the branch. And get that one. And then we also do that, and then I think that does the thing we needed to do. Is this starting to get really fucking messy? Yeah, I think it is. Like, honestly, this is the most messy fucking thing that I've seen in any blueprint in a while. So where the fuck is this supposed to connect to? Is it supposed to connect to anything? I don't know. Let's just see if this works. Okay, camera does not update. Set world location. It's not working. But at least this entire thing seems to more or less work. It's just the set world location that's not working. Let's print. This value. So after every single time we complete that loop, we print that value. That's hello. That's not what I want. Which value do we print? That's duration. I would very much like this to be the string, not the duration. Thank you very much. Okay, so that's 0.0. And it keeps being 0.0. That's probably because somewhere in this chain of multiplication, we we have a 0 in there somewhere, and that's what fucking things up. But where and what? Okay, so this keeps being 0 for the time being, and I don't think we need this anymore at all. So let's just not delete it yet. We might still need it. Let's just put it somewhere. Like, definitely we still need this. So let's just connect this up. And then put this somewhere safe where we can reference it whenever we might need. Okay, so this node is still doing what it's doing. It's just this is not doing what it should be doing. And I don't exactly know how to figure out where things go wrong. So let's go over this entire thing again. Because that hasn't been tiring at all so far. You know what? Let's print this value instead. What value are we printing here? We are printing the total distance between 2 points. That's returning 0.0. So that seems like it might be the problem. What are we doing here? We are getting the integer. We are getting the integer plus 1. And then we are subtracting the lower one from the bigger one. So that should make sense. Hold on, did I not? I don't think I connected them properly. Hold on a moment. That one to there. Okay. Let's get this one. That's 0.0, but that makes sense because this is the distance along spline for index 0. This should be a significantly higher number. It is not. Why is it not? We do have a camera spline, right? Yeah, we do. Everything else aside, this should just like do the thing that I expected it to do, I think. So except that we are using a variable here. That we really should just like be using this value for instead. Okay. Let's spread this out a little bit more, because now things are starting to get like actually confusing. So let's start things from the very beginning again and make them a little more ordered, because I think we have something that might work. I have a problem somewhere and I don't know where it is. So what we have is we get a world location along spline. We know this works. That value then gets passed into these two things. You know what will help is seeing a print string here to make sure that this entire thing even runs. And then stop running this for a moment because we know that does not work. Okay, so that entire thing just does not work. And that's probably where our issue is. So why does it not work? Is really what we're coming down to now. AND gate. Okay, so condition 1 is A is less than B. So distance along spline is less than current index plus 1. That should be true at least some points. The other one is distance along spline, which we are most definitely going to make a thing out of that does a thing a little something like fuck, I hate these wiggly lines, dude. Fucking hate them. I guess we can do that for the time being. I need to figure out a way to get those lines straight. Matter of fact, I might just go Google that right now. Unreal Blueprint lines straight. How to get straight lines and blueprints, because I'm fucking done with it. You can find in the editor preferences. That is in edits, editor preferences, I think, and then it's called spline tangent. I think it's called forward spline tangent. So these should all just be at 0. And that should make the lines go straight. Now the lines are straight, so that's what I fucking wanted to begin with. Thank you. Now I just need to be able to rotate them. That would be absolutely fantastic. So, okay, I can see what I'm doing again. That's a really fucking good start. Wait, what? They still got inputs and outputs. Is that what's going on? Why? Now what is the problem? The problem is, really, that also is an issue. Like, legitimately it is. Like, do I honestly need to do something like this in order to make things... Sure, why not? I'll probably say that back in a moment, because this does not seem very workable either, if I'm being honest with you. The idea is that you can at least make straighter lines, right? If we're doing straight lines anyway, might as well do this to make it a little bit more obvious. Okay. Like, honestly, let's just do that straight up. I'm worrying about visual stuff, which I should not be worrying about right now. Should be worrying about making things work, but being able to see what you're doing is kind of an important step in making sure things work. So, yeah, that means that this condition returns false. I just don't quite understand why, I think. So if somebody were kind enough to come explain that to me, that would be grand. We don't need that one anymore. Because we're looking at my character's distance along spline. That is greater than... Oh, do I have these the wrong way around? I think I have these the wrong way around. Hold on. Yeah, I might. So let's turn these two around real quick. That's this is greater than that, and this is greater than... No, this is greater than that. I think that is what we had, right? That's still not really doing anything for me. Okay, let's do things slightly differently. Instead of only printing when it's true, I just wanted to print the condition. Because this is going to print false at the start of the game. like a lot. So let's compare this again. We have the distance. If that is more than, yeah, so that definitely is not what it needed to be. I'm just being an idiot. Because the distance along spline needs to be less than the next index. But it also needs to be more than the last index. Which is just this array element. Less than or equal to. That's the problem, I think. Less than or equal to. It's probably not the problem actually now I think about it, because it doesn't actually start at 0. Yeah, that's false. But why? But why is it false? Is the question. Okay, so we understand that it's false. Let's make it print out the distance we have. 0. Okay. It's not gonna do a lot, but I just wanna like figure this out. It's got 7 index points, okay. And those all give me... Yeah, okay, so we've got one at 0, one at all these values. So good to know that this works. It's just figuring out this whole deal, which is a problem. Because I can only run this once I know which 2 indexes to work with. Is the issue, right? I think I can get away with also making this a greater than or equals. Wait, that was a greater than, right? No, this is a less than. So get away with this being a less than or equals, and that should still work once it starts working. If that makes any sense, probably not. And then that one goes there. You can go fuck yourself. So just out of curiosity, right? If I say we place this one a little further back so that we don't actually start at 0. And then make you print out the current distance again. You don't start at 0, you start at like 400 something. Which is good, because that means that we know that it's not a matter of it fucks up because it starts at 0, but something about this logic is just not adding up, and I don't know what. Because to me this makes total sense. Like, what I can do is like just put this here and get array index, but at that point we really don't need a for each loop anymore. Is kind of the thing, right? So, but let's just give it a test and see if this fixes it. Yeah, it didn't. Fucking surprise. So why doesn't this work? Let's make it print the condition for the bottom one here real quick. Hold on. It starts with true and then turns real quick to false. Why is that? Because of this. This needs to just be a int plus int that goes into there. I think it goes into nothing else. And the same thing goes here, right? This just needs to be an int plus int so that the actual variable does not get fucked up, or the index value, that is. And then once all that is true, then you start running set word location. We don't need this here anymore either. Okay, that was not the problem. Oh, it's because this has the exact same issue. We need to do a int plus int. Plus int and connect this one up to that and get this one the fuck out of there. And that should now keep that as, at least it's consistently false. Instead of first true and then false. So that's something. But every so often it should be true, because distance is greater than let's print one more, print string, and print the actual index as well. So, okay, so it is true every so often. So it prints the index first. So we go 1 is true, or 0 is true, 1 is false, 2 is false, and so on and so forth. It also does not seem to be printing up to 7 anymore, but that makes sense actually. Okay. So then if I make it print this one instead, it says, hold on, it says 0 is true, and then it says, it's probably the other way around then. So it's false for 0, true for everything else. I mean, that just should straight up work, right? Why doesn't it? Okay, I'm gonna real quick go to the bathroom and maybe I'll get inspiration there. You listen to some more Spyro. Yes, it turns out when you click off Unreal, it stops animating as well. So I figure you guys have like a little thing to look at, but you didn't. Okay. So for the time being, we're just going to get rid of the entire loop body here because it's just distracting me. And we're going to go with this entire thing again, I guess. Yeah, we kind of got him. Put this over here. There's one over there. This one over here. Just, okay, at this point I actually do care quite a lot about things being a little bit more readable. So let's make it a little bit more readable. Which is to say, put this here, which means that this is being put like over here. That means that we're putting this like that. And this is being put like that. This we go over there. Okay. Is it more readable now? Maybe, maybe not. This should be connected to the loop body and not to complete, I think, after all. Okay. At least we're not getting any errors. We're also not getting any camera movements. But But we can try to add in a print string in between just to see. I think we're going to get a lot of false being printed on the screen because, again, I don't know what the fuck I'm doing. Yeah, so that's all false. And that is because... Why? Why is that? Okay. I'm going to read this out loud again. I know this is the 50th time that I've done so. Returns true if A is greater or equal to B. So if A, which is the top one, so that's the total distance traveled, is greater than or equal to B, which is the current array element, this is true. So if I plug this into there, I should be printing true. Always. I'm printing false. That's interesting. Yeah, that is very interesting. Why is that? Because my distance along spline hold on, that's not what I wanted to do. It's 400 and then some. Wait. This is being set as true. And then set world location, set world rotation. So why isn't it setting the world location? Now I'm doubly confused, because if this is all executing, I mean, definitely hook this up into there if you disconnect the print string. If that's all being executed, this reads as true, because otherwise we wouldn't see this. And the world rotation is even being set. That just means that this value is not being done with what it should be done with. And that is because... Why? I guess we add in a print string here real quick. We see what this value ends up being. And maybe... that's -1. So, okay. Those things are just fucking... Something is subtracting the wrong way around. And I'm guessing it's this. Has to be subtracting the wrong way around. And that definitely seems to have fixed at least something. It's still not what I want it to be, but it's a fucking start. So... Now I want to see this value as I play. Because that is slowly building towards 1.0. And it seems reasonable to assume that I was about 60% of the way through, so that 1.0 would have been here. That seems reasonable to assume. Let's agree on that? Okay, let's agree on that. So this value is doing what it should be doing. That's good to know. There's no need for me to fuck around with that. Then this should be just the percentage. So that's the exact same because 0 minus 0 is 0. So let's try to make our way all the way over there to see if it resets back to being lower than 1. If we... It did. That's all that I needed to know. Okay, so this is the percentage value that we have. That's good. It's 126. So this is the... That's the value between the 2 points, is what that is, right? So this is going to set back to a low number as well any moment now. Yeah, so that's now back to starting from 0 to whatever. Again, and that is that number. And this number is the distance along spline for the last index that we have passed. So this should now, any moment, turn into that. So why doesn't it? Because this all makes perfect sense to me. Like it starts at 126, then we go about 2,500 units. Why does the camera barely move? Like the camera does move, is what's really throwing me here. Let's set the rotation to off just so that I can see the actual movement of the camera a little bit better. It's very slow in how it moves. Is that because I... Ah, that makes sense. Hold on. That's because I need to make a proper amount of spline points. So everything works, I'm just being an idiot. So this should roughly line up with that. Then that should roughly line up with that. That should roughly line up with that. And all that should be a little bit less rotated. And a little bit less scaled as well, preferably. So now this should work a lot better. Okay, let's turn the rotation back on. It's a bit wild, but more or less it works. right? As long as the spline points are done properly, which that's what we're going to do now. But I think the programming works. I hope I'm explaining it well. Thanks for dropping by and enjoying, hopefully. I must admit that that I've for the past like hour and a half that I've been working on this, I've been more confused myself than any person watching this, most likely. But I think everything I've got working now. So if you want to see me actually like use this shit, let's remove all the spline points and shit we made, and let's add in a new one to test whether or not everything works as intended. Railcam, there we go. So we start with the camera a fair bit behind the character. That seems like a good idea. And then we... Okay, that's kind of annoying. Also would very much like to minimize this preview if at all possible. I don't know how and if I can do that. But I'll give it a shot. Okay, so now that I'm not focusing anymore, let's go back to listening to music. I haven't listened to the music in like an hour. Anyway, so this goes more or less straight to go with the... Let's just put these down a little bit so that I can see where they're at. Not too much, but at least a little. And then that goes to like all the way here. Then this goes all the way like that, and I think if I just like rotate this one around a little and move this one like that, it should get me a pretty god-darn decent result, I think. Then everything up until the corner here is more or less just a straight line, which should be followed by this, but it should go down a little bit, but it should go down not so gradually. So where's my tangents? That's very that's a very big tangent indeed. Question is, if I change one of these, it changes both of them, right? Yeah. Is there any way that I can not do that? Unreal spline change only one tangent. Probably is a way for me to get that to work. That's going to require to do a lot of reading on my part, so I'm not going to do that right now. But that seems like a thing that I... maybe having the curve a little bit more steep like that is actually not that bad of an idea. And this needs to slowly go up a little as well, so like just make that a bit of a valley maybe. And then when this one goes in that direction, that's going to make that curve real big. Probably a bit too big, as a matter of fact. Probably doesn't matter that much. So something a little like that. But have it go a decent amount up. a little bit more like that. You go a little more back. Because then when we get to this bit, we want the camera to be a lot more over here. And a decent amount more down, I think, right? Turned around a bit as well. Put you back onto a relatively straight path. See, if this actually works the way I intended to work, this can go more or less like straight all the way over here. This is not too bad of a... that's the wrong spline. This is not too bad of a system to make your camera work with, I would say. So, I go all the way over there. So let's test this first bit of the level, just to see how well it works. I mean, that ain't whole bad so far. Okay, that ain't great. Gonna have to fix that, but so far is working decently well, I would say. Okay, depth perception still is kind of an issue, of course. But this is a huge fucking upgrade over what we started this stream with, I would argue. Yeah, that AI enemy is still very bad. Okay, so what is the big issue here? I think it's just very... these very steep... areas. So if I can just like added that around a little bit. I mean, this also definitely has an issue with being maybe this will be a bit better. Camera should not be ahead of the character like ever, ideally. I don't know why it cuts here. Has something to do with this. I do know why it cuts there. Because there is a little overlap there, and that has to do with this spline point being way too big. So in theory, this should fix that. As I said yesterday in the stream as well. Oh, I almost died. As I said yesterday in the stream as well, there's definitely going to be a bit of an issue with it still being relatively finicky to work with. But I think this is a pretty decent approximation of how the camera works in modern Crash Bandicoot games. So... like, I'm going to need to learn to work with the tool that I've just created. That much is for goddamn sure. But I think the tool itself is more or less like pretty decent, at least. Yeah. I don't dislike it. So let's clean up well, this fucking mess of of a code real quick, just to make things a little bit more manageable for the good old eyes. Like this point being there. And there for each loop for that one. Okay, that's good enough. Then I mean, this is the boring stuff that I definitely like. Is there a need to do this on screen? No. Am I going to do it on screen? You betcha. Yeah, this does not need to have one of those connecting things. We're just going to... Not even that, actually. Matter of fact, we are going to connect you through this one, because it's closer by. This one can just hang out under you. That can hang out under there. This entire deal needs to go over to the right quite a bit more. Because it makes a lot more sense for you to be there. You can probably best to have you there. This is still very confusing, visually speaking, maybe, but that's what you're gonna have with like node networks that cross-reference things a lot. Is things are going to like overlap each other every now and then. But at least now I can like literally just follow the line and see where they go and where they come from. So we truncate that. We add one to it. This value gets used in there, so we actually physically put it there. Okay, this more or less does the trick. So let's put this entire deal more over here, just to be sure that we understand that that happens after that entire deal. And we have a camera system! After 4 hours of programming, we have a decently well working camera system. Again, there's definitely going to be a bit of trickery required on my part to get used to how it actually works. But that's just a matter of practice and, to a certain extent, iteration when I figure out, you know what, this doesn't actually work as well as I thought it might. Like here, there's 2 points very much on top of each other, so I just need to learn that. As a matter of fact, this point just needs to be a fair bit more into that direction, which then means that putting this point back towards here might not be that big a deal. And then we can pull this tangent out a little bit. Now I think about it, a lot of this is going to be done from a top perspective, most likely, because now these two are very close together as well, so we want probably have this a little bit behind that. This is a side-scrolling section, so we probably want to have these relatively close together. And as we go along here, it changes from side-scrolling back to a over-the-shoulder view with a hopefully much smaller angle than that. So we pull you out like that. And we have you for this bit going like that. That should end right around here or so. Probably move this one over there a little bit more. then for this section, I think I want the camera to be slightly higher up. So we go back to perspective mode real quick. Like, honestly, this is the first time I've made something in Unreal Engine where I feel like if I put this on the marketplace, I could like actually like ask a couple of bucks for it. Not too much, like not a lot at all, but a bit. Because this actually is like just straight up a pretty... this definitely needs to be higher up to begin with. As does this, I would say. No, not too much. Not too much at all. Hadn't I already banned that fucker? Let's try things out a little. Let's see how this works. Okay, now... It seems like even cutting corners actually doesn't mess up the camera system too much. So the camera system might be actually more robust than I imagined it would be at this stage. Because I kind of figured that this would fuck it up real bad. And it really seems like it kind of just doesn't. Like, this works. It straight up just does. Let's see how it interacts with checkpoints. It's not entirely unimportant. So if I die now... So yeah, I'm off the graph, so it doesn't do the thing anymore. But if I die and I reset, that just works pretty perfectly as well. I think I have a working camera system, guys. Okay. This just means that I have to redo the camera system or the camera bits for levels that I already have, of course. Then this entire section we can up until here. Actually, let's just make it up until about here. Make you follow there. And then this bit will go very similarly, but not quite the same. And this is really where I need to be able to manipulate these tangents independently of each other. Because now when I do this, it's going to... It's actually not that bad, okay. Oh, no, it still is pretty bad. Because it turned it back to... Can I compensate for that in any meaningful way? I don't think I can, really. That's annoying, because I need this one to be, like, way the fuck over here. Though I guess we could also do a little something more akin to doing it like this. And when you are there, the camera is moreover like... Okay. Then we make this a little bit smaller. So when you're there, the camera's over there. Then the camera does a bit like this, maybe? Don't make that too large. I don't know what this love face motherfucker is really like obsessed with. I know it's a bot, but I really seem obsessed with my chat right now, which I don't quite understand. And I think that if I just like pull this along and keep it a bit behind the player character, I think I've made the camera setup for this level now. Like some camera movements are kind of sudden, and depth perception still is a bit of an issue sometimes. So that really tells me that this camera position actually is still like a tiny bit too low, probably. Like if we make this camera position a little higher, that'll probably fix both of those issues more or less at the same time. And let's also decrease this a little bit. Okay, camera moving like that mid-jump is real annoying. So let's place you back a little more. Place you back a little more as well. That then automatically means you have to go back a little more too, I think. Don't even know what level this is from. Has to be Spyro 3. If I... Oh my... Okay, don't do that. Why does it do that? That's the next question. It's just a Facebook message I got. I have to assume it's got something to do with how gigantic this tangent is. Still does a cut there, but let's just keep that at how it is at the moment. I mean, at this point, the point where the camera still sucks, that's to do with the fact that I just, like, don't quite know how to deal with the thing that I've created yet. Because other than that, I think this camera actually does a pretty gosh darn good job at what it's supposed to do. Now, let's see how it does here. Could be worse. Could also be better. I think next up is fixing this fucking enemy as well. Because that still doesn't work very well. At all. And add a little more lighting towards this area, because this jump is fucking impossible if you don't know what you're jumping towards. But by and large, this level is a lot better and a lot more playable now that I've introduced this. Yeah, okay, so the world position doesn't get set anymore because I'm at the end of the level. That makes sense. I mean, I guess I can just, like, make a little bit more here. And just add that to, like, this little stretch over here. Okay, so problems with the camera in this level at the moment. This works fantastically. Like, honestly, great. Here is where we get into a bit of fuckery with the camera jumping a bit. And it jumps because I don't actually know why it jumps here. Other than it has to have something to do with this, surely. So let's fucking... There we go. Look, this song we all know. If you don't, you've never played Spyro 2. That much is for god darn obvious. Okay, let's see if this doesn't fix that little jumping issue we just had. I don't think that it will, and it might introduce some other problems that were not present before. Going back, it doesn't do the jump. That's weird. Okay, hold on. So this point corresponds to this point. This point corresponds to this point. So that just needs to be put back like a lot. Is probably most of where that issue comes from. I have to imagine. And that does not need to be as high either. So a little bit something more like something a little bit more akin to that, maybe. Going to have to play this with a controller in a moment as well to feel if it actually still cuts. Which makes sense. It does actually make sense. I think it makes sense. It might not make sense. Well, it makes sense because otherwise it wouldn't do it to computer. Computer doesn't do something for like artistic intent. It does things because it logically is told them to do. Like, that definitely needs to be a little more. Like, we need to put a point there and a point there to make sure that we're just like synced up for that bit. These points can be very much small in the way they influence the curve, but they need to be there. Yeah, if you're cutting corners, there will be jumpy cam. And there's really not a lot I can do about that other than just not make levels where you can jump corners. It is really what that comes down to. So yeah. I've got the Sonic Heroes sounding song again. At least the intro to it sounds a lot like the intro to Sonic Heroes' theme song. Camera does feel a lot more cinematic and a lot more natural. Like in some places you can still feel like the keyframes to it, but in general, the camera feels so much more natural and cinematic. Like this honestly changes the game so much by itself, like insanely so. Okay. We have a working camera system. I think I'm going to leave it at that for today. I'm very, very happy with what we made here. Like, honestly, I am. Just need to, like, things like this, you can add a little bit more scale, maybe, to the curve. And the speed at which the camera moves in certain sections is just going to change. There's not much you can really do about that, I don't think. You can probably put this spline point back just a little bit. Again, I don't think there is much we can do about this section over here. Other than maybe just making it not a curve at all and just making it a straight line. Hold on. What if we did that? just humor me here, right? What if we just did this? I very much doubt that this is going to go well, but this should allow for cutting corners as well as still function relatively normally while doing this, right? Almost. So if we then go back here and we cut the corner, yeah, no, the cutting of corners is just, I'm going to just need to make sure that you can't do that. Which is really, it's just as simple as okay, that might be slightly problematic after all. Like the easiest way to disallow cutting corners would just be this. But not that much. Like just putting a wall like there and having the wall pretty much extend all the way over here. Also, I'm going to disable cast shadows for like 3 of these. So I only have 1 shadow. I have no shadow, is what I mean. Like, this will discourage people from cutting that corner. That's for goddamn sure. It'll, yeah, make other issues though, is the thing. So that's but that's only a problem because the camera goes right through it here. So I just need to make sure that in the level design it fits. It's not supposed to be a playable level anyway. I mean, in the end, it probably will end up being playable as a 100% completion bonus for the game. But I think we looks good. Thank you, thank you. I'm actually pretty happy with this. Here it cuts for a second. Why is that? Probably is because it's a curve over there. So if we were to just make this a point instead and make it like infinitely small and rotate it properly. Well, even that is not rotated properly, it's just that this one is too big. So if we just make that a sharp corner instead, and we say that we want to be on that corner and we want to be like right about here or so. Yeah, just don't do too much with corners. is really what it comes down to. And that was the problem I had with my last version of this system as well. But at least this one works. And most of the levels I'm going to use this in are mostly going to be very linear anyway, and not have sharp corners like this. They might have a couple of turns, but they're probably not going to have very sharp corners like this. So let's add this in one of my other levels I have right now. Because I want to, is why. So we can delete these boxes now, because we're not using them anymore. Because they don't work in conjunction with this system. I figured that one out relatively quickly. Going to player start, which is definitely not in the right location. Move that all the way back there. Rail camera system. And just for simplicity's sake, we're going to do something relatively straightforward here at first. I think this is the way to do it to begin with. Just like make the line with as few points as possible, and then add in some points for finesse. That's probably the best way to go about doing this. So go back to perspective. Camera starts high up and a little further back. I wish I could see the actual like numbers for the specific spline points, so I can be a little bit more exact with them. But it's fine that that doesn't work that way. So then this goes all the way like that. And if I play this level, we... Okay. So in this segment, for instance, we want to go back to perspective real quick. In this segment, for instance, right, we want to have, like, when we get from here to there, we want to have the camera go that's way too much. We want to have the camera go a bit like that and probably a tiny bit down as well, which will maintain all the way through this obstacle, so all the way to here. Which means that we do that there. To there, I mean. And then in this section, we take some time to put the camera back on more of a top-like view. Which again, much more subtle curve, please. That's maybe a bit too much top view. Like, we need more of a perspective on it. So this should be a decent camera setup for this level. Okay. Definitely need a little bit of more time there to do its thing. Again, we're figuring this out as we go. Okay, but no, at that point we definitely need to be... Hold on. It's 1 to 1. 1 to... Oh. That makes sense. So something a bit more like that. It's way too much on top, and we'll flip it around. And that's because these two are on top of each other now. It's not necessarily a done and deal scenario here at all, but what it is functional. Not even functional, it's working. So this definitely needs to be a fair bit more backwards. I'd argue all the way back here even. So that maintains truth for this too. The issue, being the person that makes and uses the tool at the same time, is figuring out whether or not your difficulties are with using the tool or with the tool you made. And at this point, it definitely seems like, I know I've been saying this a lot, it definitely seems that the issues I'm having are more to do with me using the thing than how it's made. Okay, that's relatively annoying. Okay. That needs to definitely be a little bit more like that, I think. I know that I'm playing through the entire level every single time when I don't need to, especially with how my current camera setup works. I can just start from anywhere in the level and the camera should be in the proper position, in theory. But experiencing this camera over and over and over again is probably a good thing for testing purposes, so that's why I'm not sweating it too much. This specific platform, it might be slightly motion sickness inducing, I admit. So that's something that we might want to look into. But that's probably just a cause to change that platform and not so much change. Okay, that's slightly annoying, but it's actually not too bad. Oh yeah, the control direction is definitely an issue with this. I can only move forward dealio. So we need to override control direction in this section, and we need to be less on top of the character here. I keep making that mistake. I can already tell that that's going to be a. But that's probably just because this thing needs to be a little more ahead of the other one. Actually, that doesn't seem too bad, so maybe let's play from here. Let's see how it actually works if you start in the middle of a level. Answer is remarkably not horrible. So yeah, we definitely need to have an override for control direction here. But other than that, this all seems relatively kind of cool. This definitely needs to be side view, by the way. So we go here. Say starting from here. So that would be about this. To there, we go to a side view. And we line up relatively well with where we're at. Okay, so let's say play from there-ish. There's no reason that the camera should be all the way back there. Okay, yeah. For this puzzle specifically, it's kind of problematic, but we'll figure that out. Why did I have a camera on the... Yeah, that's definitely not what I want to have happen here. good way to fix that would be something a bit like this, maybe? No, that's not a good way to fix that at all. It's just a matter of having the entire thing be slightly higher up and further back. Is what I think we should do. Now we do the perspective to the top. And we line it up more or less with this one. And we scale you the fuck down. We scale you. We rotate you is what I mean to say, of course. And that should kind of work. Okay, that's not what I had in mind, but sure. And then you... It's actually kind of perfect. Nope. I want to see what it's like when I get all the way up there. And I think this is the way to get there, right? I realize that I'm also showing off the solution to the puzzle now. Which kind of defeats the purpose of having a puzzle. Okay, definitely that also does need like big time fixing. And this is kind of not great. Let's see. I mean, that one doesn't really do anything. Spoiler. I can't believe I actually like did that entire puzzle on my first try myself. And then when we go down here, that thing goes back up. And we can cross this bridge. Okay. So there definitely is a couple of things to work on there. But by and large, it works. And with that, I think we're going to call here for today. Because it's been 2.5 hours. And I have a functioning real camera. So I don't know when I'll stream next time. I don't want to do like every bit of development only on stream, but it's fun to stream this and also just talk about things a little bit, right? So we can probably fix at least part of that issue by okay, you are already fairly big with your tangent. We can probably make this one smaller. And put this a bit more... Not too much though. And this one... I think this entire area just has to move over to that direction a little bit to give me a little bit of time to... Which we should be able to do relatively easily, actually. Right, that's... that doesn't have that geometry in it. Fuck. I mean, this actually kind of like just has to be on this depth. Which means that this has to be on that depth as well. No, on this depth. That's what I mean. Like this one. Right about here. There just isn't a lot of room for things to be done. This is just a place where I turn off camera rotation. If I just turn off the camera rotation there, there's no problem. I think that's easier than... Okay. The cut actually kind of works there, but I don't want it. So we're going to need to figure something out about that. I think the solution is just like make a little bit more room to have that transition happen. But that's too much work for right now. So it's been fun. See you around next time. Bye-bye.